One of the things I wanted to talk about is relevance, or, whether doing research, scientific research, actually matters as being a person that is sort of digging into some new knowledge. Does it actually matter? And I personally think it does. But there's lots of people that sort of say that, hey, the stuff we do never ever gets read. It's not relevant because it's only got a citation or two citations or whatever, and I think that is not the correct attitude to think about these things. And I want to talk about that. It's not necessarily the fact that something is not being read. That's not the important part, but the important part is the fact that it's been done. So, if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack, an Associate Professor of Innovation, Strategy, and Entrepreneurship. And okay, this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out. I wanted to pay the favor for it to help you out. There's lots of ways to measure impact. So there's lots of ways. Sorry about that. I just had to take a momentary break. But so there's lots of ways to sort of measure impact of various different researchers. And one of the ways is looking at citations and counting the number of citations you have. And that's basically a measure of worth, scientific worth of individuals that are in science, right? That's really what we're talking about with science is, or citations is like, is this person worth it? Is this person legitimate? Are people paying attention to that particular research or that research area? And a lot of us get really upset with, not getting cited that much, or, just doing something that takes a lot of time. And we get very just, we start reflecting on, does this matter? And one way to sort of suggest that if we look at citations alone and we sort of think about citations alone, and then for most of us, it does not matter. We don't matter. We're irrelevant, right? Most work in this world, artistic work, scientific work, whatever kind of work it is, it follows what is called the Pareto distribution. And that distribution is really well known, in that there is a very, very long tail that goes towards the extreme. But most things are sort of grouped towards, very much to the left-hand side, where you're going to see a lot of occurrences of something, right? So in the case of citations, you're probably going to see most papers getting cited 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times. And that's scientific work in general. This is also true of artistic work. And so you look at that and you're like, oh man, that doesn't really matter. And then every once in a while there is something that, for whatever reason, the person, maybe they have some underlying skill, maybe they have a lucky situation, maybe that they're in the right context, maybe whatever, all these different factors. They have an article that just goes bananas. And that is that tail, right? Where there's one article that gets cited 20,000 times. And you see this often in science where that happens, right? There's one article that is just, I was just looking at somebody the other day that it's not in academia right now, and they have an article that's cited 20,000 times. And people would say that is like, that if somebody was cited 20,000 times, they have a pretty significant impact. People understand who they are and, the contribution and all that kind of stuff, right? But to get to that point where it's cited so many times, for most things actually never get cited. And that's the reason why, people do exit academia, or they get frustrated and they think that it doesn't matter. But the point of what we're doing is not to get cited. And I think that is a false misnomer. And I think that's a really actually poor measure of what we are trying to do. And what we're trying to do is actually capture the possibility of studying something, or the possibility that somebody in the future, at some point in the next 500 years, the next infinite number of years, is going to pick up that piece of research, piece of that article, or that thing that you were working on, and say, hey, somebody's already done this. And then that thing is actually going to become in play and might become a very significant contribution. So it's really, really hard to think about this kind of stuff in terms of, these lagging indicators. It might be in 200 years. Honestly, this very much could happen, and it does happen. In 200 years, somebody might pick up something that somebody wrote, like 200 years from now, right? So imagine it's 2021 at the end of 2021, so it's going to be 22, 21. Imagine that I wrote an article that just got out, and nobody paid attention to it. It's completely irrelevant. But in 200 years from now, somebody might be studying something and saying, hey, you know what? This person actually studied this 200 years from now. And then this, or 200 years ago. And this completely revolutionizes the way that we understand something, because it's something somebody wrote or understood, and they're like, oh my God, this is a crazy insight. Why didn't I think of this? And we have to, all of a sudden that becomes in play. So measuring that notion of I don't quite know how to explain it. I know that there are various different. It's a measure of basically opportunity, where we are seeing where the world can possibly go and what they can do with the knowledge that you have. That is more appropriate, and yet we never think about that, right? We think of these lagging indicators in terms of our wealth, or our I guess intellectual wealth, or our legitimacy or status, and we look at that and we say, we're not worth it. What am I doing this? Nobody's ever going to pay attention to that. But it's not about that. It's about somebody understanding, somebody knowing that it's been done before, and that they can pick it up and build on those ideas, and they can say, hey, this is an important part of the puzzle that we never thought about before, or somebody thought about this many, many years ago, and it is an important part of the conversation that we need to start talking about. So that's why I'm very nervous about these empirical measures of worth, empirical measures of status and legitimacy, and all those kind of things, because they're often very, very imperfect. They often don't capture other things, like the softer things that are very, very hard to capture, that are underlying a lot of structure, right? So the informal organization behind science, and there definitely could be that, right? Where there are, people may try to capture this, where there is, very collaborative colleague, for example, that might sort of help in different ways, but they necessarily don't care about the citations, and that doesn't necessarily is important. It's not anything to do with getting citations, right? So they might take up, a great example of this, they might be willing to teach a bunch of extra courses so junior scholars can do well and do research in that area. So that's going to take away from their ability to do research and become even more famous, and all those kind of things. And we all have to sort of contribute in that sort of sense in in scholarship and research, where we do have to teach a little bit, because that we that we need to sort of, we have a certain amount of teaching that we have to do, and giving back, basically, of what we're trying to do in dispelling this information. So we need to really be careful of how we treat these measures of worth, these measures of status and legitimacy, and really start thinking about what is the, I'm an absolute fan of this idea of the logic of appropriateness, which is what Jim March and Johan Olson talked about many years ago in terms of decision making, right? Like, and I wish it had bigger play, because it's an important concept. So the logic of consequences is very much like, this is the way that we understand the world at this moment, where we have sort of actions and outcomes, or actions lead to outcomes, and then that there is some sort of consequential behavior of what we're trying to do. But there's another way to understand human behavior and the things that we do, and that's what is appropriate, what is our duty, what is the thing that we're doing as a calling. And this was, it's kind of more on the older side of thinking about your basically religious duty of what we're trying to do. And what we need to understand is that there's very much just this sort of there's very much a duty component to what we're doing, and we have to view it as such, right? Otherwise, we're not going to make any significant progress if we just simply focus on consequences, unless the game is to measure those consequences, and that is the entire game that what we're doing. But I'm uncomfortable with that, because what that does is it removes any ambiguity from the system, and what we do is basically explorers, right? The entire system is ambiguity. It's entirely uncertain, and if we just focus on the things that are sort of measured, we're never going to really stray far from the things that we already know, because those things are the things that are easy to measure. It's going to push out all of the stuff that are challenging to measure, and that we should go to, and we should find a challenging problem, right? Like, a person that actually does this fairly well, and probably gets people either view him as heroic or not so heroic, is Elon Musk. Is really an interesting fellow in the sense that he went into multiple domains, and instead of looking at like, this is the way that we normally do things, this is the way that we sort of measure these things, and we're just going to additively build on this, right? Like in the auto industry, for example, or in the rocketry or space exploration industries. And he just simply said, why aren't we doing something that is completely different? And that is really ambiguous. It is something that he, if you sort of see, look at his story and stuff, he's doing this because he views that this is his duty. He thinks that this is that exploration is a really important part, and so he was able to, amongst not him, right? Like this is a large effort beyond a single person, but that there is. You can see where we don't do things very well, and we are ambiguous, or uncertain in these certain areas. And we need to go to those areas. We need to push those areas by exploring things that are not going to be easily measured, and that are not. They seem crazy, right? Like space exploration, private space exploration back in 2000, 20 years ago, was crazy. They had the SpaceX Prize. And the SpaceX Prize was the fact that this was a crazy idea, and let's have a prize to incentivize people to do crazy ideas. That seems absolutely impossible. And now we have a private space industry, largely due to SpaceX or space, or the X Prize. Sorry, the X Prize, largely due to that, but also efforts by people that are like, let's do something crazy, and let's see if we can actually make this crazy thing happen, which is 20 years out in the making, right? Like SpaceX, I don't know if it's profitable at this moment, probably, maybe, but in terms of becoming very profitable, which likely it will be, right? Like it's still very uncertain, but likely it will be. We're still a long ways away by the time that this is like our. This is the thing we do: send rockets up every 30 minutes or whatever into space, and do all that kind of stuff. So what I'm getting at is we need to be more comfortable with doing things for the fact that we just simply should do it, and not worry about citations and those lagging indicators. Those citation counts where somebody has got 30,000 citations, it doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen in a year. I mean, that's something that was published 30 years ago. And could you imagine if your only way that you're measuring yourself is your worth of those citation counts, and you have to wait for 30 years by the time you're like, yeah, I'm worth it. Like, that's bananas, right? Like, that is absolutely bananas to go through life that way, of saying, like, I'm only worth it after 30 years, right? We have to recognize that everything that we do is equally important. And the other thing to remember is that there's many people that are working on similar projects, and 30 years out, they don't get those 30,000 citations. Not one person does, because of, various different other factors. But, they're sort of part of this collective effort of understanding something. So, long story short, be cool with, be cool with who you are. And know that you're doing this for personal discovery, for the greater good, for things that truly matter, like really, really, truly matter, and not for the things that are about performance, or about making money or prestige and all those things. And, just do it because it's like the right thing to do. This is a good thing to do scientific discovery, and to go into those awkward moments, and that this is what it means to live a good life, to go and to be happy playing around and discovering things, and being happy and okay with contributing in various different ways, even though that your contribution may be smaller than others, but just being happy with the fact that you're doing that, and it's a cool thing that you're doing it, and I honestly truly believe that you have to be okay with the fact that you're happy doing it. You have an enormous amount of gratitude from doing it, even though day to day can be tough. But you have an enormous amount of gratitude, and when you're doing it, you can smile and be okay with who you are as a person. It's all you can do, and I think that's an important thing to think about. So, with that, hopefully you get your worth from other things that are deeper, that give you meaning. Whether it is spirituality for some people, or the fact that you're part of some big human endeavor for other people, or you've got this innate thing of you've got this conscience that is pulling you towards doing things that are good, that are contributing in various different ways. That all that matters. That's it. You don't have to do anything that's big. You don't have to do any grand challenges and I don't know, solve all the Earth's problems and all that kind of stuff. You just have to be like, all right, I'm gonna just piddle. I'm going to just putter away at this thing and be okay with it, because I know it's the right thing to do. So, good luck, and have a good one.